we'd gotten through most of the steak, and that's when she approached the table. And it's not what a typical waitress does. And that was startling in and of itself. For someone to step up to your table and say, I have a question to ask, a personal question to ask you. I'm Stephanie Overman. I'm Jason Overman's wife, and this is my recollection of our meeting with Tori.
I'm Jason Overman. I'm pastor of the Jasper Church of God Seventh Day and the editor of publications of the Bible Advocate Press. And this is my transformation story, but maybe from a little bit different angle. It's being part of a transformation event.
The first part of the story was in regards to that we had went to Springfield and that we wanted to drop off the kids and spend time together for our anniversary.
We thought we would get away and have an evening, the two of us, and rent a hotel room, have a nice meal, and just enjoy ourselves for the weekend. And part of this story, it requires me to tell on myself, because when we got to town, we got our hotel room. We were already running a little bit late. I was starting to get cranky. I was hungry.
And that was proving to be a little bit testy for him to come up with the energy to entertain me and be an engaging partner.
My wife wanted to go to Sam's Club. She loves Sam's Club, and anytime we're near one, she wants to go by, and I was not wanting anything to do with that. I didn't want to go to Sam's Club. I wanted to have a steak and then go back to the hotel room.
So he begrudgingly said, okay, and he said, I'll stand in the book section, and when you're done with whatever you're having to buy, just pick me up on the way to the cash register.
Anytime we go to Sam's Club, I just go to the book section, and I tell my wife, pick me up when you're done. If you know Sam's, it's enormous. It's like 5 football fields. And I just am not going to walk all over while she picks up coffee and whatnot, the little things we get around the house. So I went to the books, and I'm just browsing. I love books. And any chance to buy a book, I will, just because I love books so much. And as I was browsing, I came across a children's storybook. And I thought, this is a really nice children's Bible storybook. I don't need it, but I really just want to buy it. And so my wife comes by a little bit later on. I've got this book under my arm, and she comes by and is like, Steph, I found a children's Bible storybook. I really want to buy it.
And I said, well, honey, both of our kids are older, and we really don't need another children's Bible story. And he said, but I really liked this one, and I thought it would be really interesting to have. And I said, okay, let's get it and go on. So we put it in the cart and checked out and headed on to try to find a restaurant.
Finally, the night's back on course, and we've checked into our hotel, and so we're looking for a steak, and now it's like 9 o'clock at night. And we start going to some places that we were hoping to get in, an Italian restaurant, a steakhouse, and we were being turned away everywhere we went.
It was so bizarre, because the very first restaurant we went to, and we walked in, and she said, well, we have room, but we are totally out of food. We had a group come in, and it was unexpected, and we have no food. And I, it was kind of shocking to go into a restaurant in this day and age and somebody to say, I don't have any food. It was so surreal.
At this point, I was like, let's go to Taco Bell and get a burrito supreme and go back and watch TV at the hotel. And my wife just insisted, no, we're going to have a steak.
It's our anniversary. The kids are off doing something else, and we actually have a night on the town, and so I just insisted. I wasn't going to give up.
And so we ended up finding a place downtown in the University District. It was it's like a sports bar. It was where the kids were hanging out, and they had the loud music going, the lights going. But they were open, they were serving, and they had steak.
Of course, it was loud and just not really what you'd expect for an anniversary type of dinner. And it was But I was just happy that he and I were going to have a conversation.
We found a back table in the restaurant in the dark. Tried to get as far from the noise as we could, and so we could visit.
We're sitting there chatting with each other, and it was a really nice, he got past his grumpiness, and we were enjoying each other's company and reflecting on the day and the year and the kids. And
our waitress comes up to us, and I could tell right away that this young lady was special. She was super friendly, super interested in us. And so we began chatting with her, and she took our order. I ordered, we both ordered steaks. We both basically ordered the same meal, and we said, hold the bacon bits on our potatoes. So later on, we're eating our meal, and she comes back to us, and she crosses her arm, and she says, "Can I ask you a personal question that's just bugging me?" And I said, "Well, sure." And she said, "Okay, so you order steaks, but you don't want bacon on your potatoes. I don't get that."
And it was bold on her part, and that part was surprising as well, as much as in this crazy, noisy, by this time probably 11 o'clock, and she feels convicted to ask this question. And asking, she had already went through the steps. They can't be a food allergy because they both said they didn't want it, so why would they can't be vegetarian because they're eating steak. And so she had already was trying to work through the process of why wouldn't they both of them want bacon on their salad.
And I said, "Well, we're Christians, and we're Bible-believing Christians." And I said, we follow this biblical principle of not eating pork, not eating unclean food, as the Bible describes it. And she seemed fine with that, but she immediately got defensive when I said we were Bible-believing Christians. Her countenance noticeably changed, and she said, "Are you against gays and lesbians?" And all of a sudden, there was this opportunity to start talking about what it meant for us to be Christians. And we said, "No, we're not against gays and lesbians." And of course, I understood it because in the world she comes from, Christianity is so politicized that it's, we're politically against this or politically against that or for this or for that. And so she was already had an impression of what Christians were. And my wife, I believe it was Stephanie, that said, "Do you know the story of Adam and Eve and how the world fell into sin?" And she said, "No." She said, I grew up in a church. There was lots of rituals, but I didn't really know the Bible very good. The Bible was not really talked about. There's lots of rituals, but not much Bible.
She mentioned that she had her grandmother is who helped take care of her son, and she was very, very religious, and she was, navigating how to let her son hear biblical stories while she had no conviction. And that left me speechless at times in that conversation, realizing that here, when we think about the Great Commission, especially in the United States, realizing that you just think everybody's heard of Jesus. Everybody understands what he did for us. And we should understand how we live our lives in accordance to have a relationship with him. To meet a woman in our backyard, basically, that didn't have any idea of even the story of Adam and Eve and how that started sin. Their disobedience started sin just with the simple partaking of a piece of fruit that they weren't supposed to have. And sometimes as Christians, I think we make it really complicated.
The place is packed and she's busy. And so she's like coming in, asking questions, and then she's running off and then coming back. At one point, we're finishing up the meal and she pulls a chair up from the table opposite and sits down. "Can I ask you some more questions?" And so we start talking. I just began to ask her about her background. And she says, "Well, I grew up in a church, but I left all that behind years ago." And she says, I'm a single mom. I have a little boy. By the way, her name was Tori. And so she tells us about her son, who was, I believe, like 3 years old, named Evan. And she's like, should I take him should I take him to church? Should I take him to an Easter program? And it was right around that time. And I said, well, that's kind of funny, as our church actually doesn't celebrate Easter, but we do celebrate the resurrection of Christ. And I said, why do you want to take him to church? And she said, well, because I want him to have a choice. And I said, but Tori, he's only 3 years old. And you've already decided that you don't believe in God. You don't believe in the Bible. I said, but your heart is tugging you that maybe you need to take your child to church. I said, maybe God is calling you as his mother to church to be with Evan there. Maybe you both need to experience something, learn more about Jesus. And it was just then that all of a sudden it dawned on me, we just bought this book. I Will Follow Jesus was the name of this little children's storybook. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my goodness. I just kind of got shivers went up my spine. I looked at Stephanie, and it's almost like we registered. And I said, and of course she runs off. In fact, at this point, the table opposite tapped her on the shoulder. She's sitting at our table now as a waitress, and the table behind us taps her shoulder and says, can we get our ticket? and so she's like, I'll be right back. Hold on to that. And she runs and gets ticket. Next thing she's back and she's sitting down. She's down. What were you saying? And I said, I just got to tell you about our evening and how God's grace works. And I confessed to her, I said, I was in a bad mood. I mean, you got to know how we got here tonight. I said, I was in a bad mood. We ended up at Sam's. I bought this little children's storybook. A couple restaurants turned us away. We ended up here on a fluke. And I said, and now I realize what this whole evening was all about. It wasn't about me and my anniversary or getting a steak at all. It was really being about being here at this moment to meet you and to hear about your son. And I said, would you mind if we gifted you this storybook, I Will Follow Jesus, for you to read with your son? And she got tears in her eyes, and she said, well, that's so sweet, you know? And so we paid our bill, and Steph and I went out and went to the car and got this book, and we signed our names in it to Tori and Evan. And I went back in and presented it to her, and we hugged, and she said, thank you so much. I really can't believe what's happened tonight. And I said, I really can't either. It's just the grace of God, and God bless you.
And that has been something Jason and I have reflected on a lot as a couple, that God placed us there. He closed doors along the way. He opened other doors that we could have taken that would have never experienced this. And it's a profound story, a profound experience to my realization of how God opens doors for us to evangelize in ways we never would have tied it up in a nice little package to make it all happen, to look all nice and fit inside that box.
This event really altered my thinking about evangelism, because my thinking, is defined by techniques. Okay, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go do that, and here's the program that we're going to set up to make this possible. And I'm not discounting any of those things. What this event taught me is that God is always on a mission, whether I'm in a program or have a technique in mind at all. And this evening, when I was not thinking about any evangelistic program or any particular technique at all, God snuck up on me. And it just made me really totally rethink what evangelism is all about for us in this time, especially in our politicized world. And I think the kind of evangelism that God's calling us to is relational. And for it to be relational, it has to be real and authentic. It has to be just where we're at and living our lives day to day and making friends of waitresses and being ready to share that hope and that joy that we have in our heart because Jesus is our Lord.